Now in the second part of this lesson, we'll be looking at the ripple of power of Roger Federer, and we're back here in our normal domain on the tennis court. So we'll look at Roger Federer's forehand from my personal and unpublished archive of video in a moment. But before we look at that, I just want to make a few points about power generation in tennis. Again, we often hear people say to get more power, step into the ball, move forward into it. This sort of linear coaching idea. And basically, I think that this is misleading. And it much exaggerates the power potential of stepping in or stepping through in terms of our tennis shots. Now, the only time that's not is basically in a volley. So in a volley, we set the racket out front here, right? And we are linearly moving forward, stepping into the ball, and truly the power of our body moving forward is transmitted in the contact for a volley. But this is quite different than the power strokes in tennis. Power strokes, topspin, forehand, backhand, serve overhead. There we're talking about rotational power that comes from this ripple of power, this vertical and then rotational effect in our middle power train area. And so that's quite a bit different, and many times in tennis we don't step in at all. We're moving backwards, and so all of our weight primarily is on the back foot, yet we still have to generate a powerful shot. So we'll look at this in a little bit more detail. Now in basketball and in tennis, there is such a thing, of course, as stepping in. We do step in tennis to anchor our left side so that our right rotational movement can take place effectively and we can have a leverage point of contact. Talk about in basketball how the shooter stepped into his shot. Again, this is more about anchoring the body for this ripple of power than it is about moving our weight forward in a linear fashion towards the ball or the basket. So you can see this in Steph's long-range shots.
Here, as we repeat this little Curry jump shot, you see he's not stepping in at all. In fact, he's moving his weight backwards. Not unusual at all for him. So when not stepping in, he's using this ripple of power pelvic hip thrust that brings his left hips around and splits his legs in a kind of a scissoring action. And we'll look at that, how it applies to tennis.
The same in tennis, where we're moving all around the court. We don't always have the chance to plan our lead leg and anchor the shot. We just sort of moving on the fly, sometimes moving back to the side, and yet we have to generate this power, as we'll see with Roger Federer now.
As we play this first Federer forehand through, look particularly for this ripple of power pelvic hip snap that we'll revisit it in more detail in just a second. As you can see, Federer is not stepping in, but planting his lead leg and anchoring his left side so his hitting side can come through. With his left side anchored, now Federer can move into this powerful hip swivel that constitutes the core of the ripple of power. Note here Federer's left arm anchoring the upper body so it doesn't over-rotate, and the right leg kicking back so the lower body doesn't over-rotate. Where have we seen all these similar dynamics in another sport? Well, we've seen it with Steph Curry with his long-distance shooting. Here we see this same dynamic in Steph Curry as we saw with Roger Federer. We see the powerful ripple of power pelvic hip snap or twist. We see the right leg staying back or moving back to keep the body from over-rotating. And we see the splitting of the legs. Now let's look at a few more Federer forehands and enjoy Roger's magnificent execution of the ripple of power. You can see more clearly in this last video how Roger's power is not coming from stepping in. In fact, his weight is moving substantially back, yet he still generates great power with this ripple of power pelvic hip snap.
So to highlight a few things in Roger Federer's ripple of power, let's just go over this very slowly. So we see a turn initial turn of the shoulders and the racket usually still facing forward. And we see the weight shifted to this back leg.
Here we segue back to Roger Federer to see how he does this.
So just as in basketball, where the player's knees are bent, similar to this, but we still see a little bit of an extra little hop, little jump, little down and up action to get more energy going in a vertical manner. We see the same exact thing in tennis, where the player is initially turned, but then as they start to move into the slot position and ready to explode, we see a little bit of a hip flexion here, downturn. So this is done for the same reason as the basketball, so that we can drive up in a much more dynamic fashion. Of course, we see this with Roger. So he's here, and then he's here, and then he's really way down here. Now all the energy is gathered up here in this right pelvic hip area, right? And this left side is anchoring this action. That's really the key.
Here we'll go back to Roger Federer's forehand and see how he executes this anchoring and then this pelvis hip snap.
What we see with most juniors and beginning players is an understanding of the swing pretty much straight back, and then a rotational movement, very slow through the point of contact. Not only is it slow, it doesn't impart the right plane and trajectory for the swing path, doesn't impart the right spin on the ball. So again, this is more than about power generation. It's about how, at the end of the day, our racket contacts the ball and how we express ourselves with our hands. Before I give you a few quick tips on how to strengthen this ripple of power in your tennis game and then how to practice it, I just want to say a few general comments about tennis reach and what we're trying to do. So I hope I'm trying to make a very simple point, is that if we look beyond the narrow bounds of tennis into these other sports, especially where super athletes like Steph Curry are creating revolutions in their sport, I think it behooves us to take a look at these other sports, these other great athletes, see what we can learn, and then apply them to the techniques of tennis. That's what Tennis Reach is all about.